This is the third quarter update for the Amplify ETFs Thematic All-Stars Fund, symbol MVPS. Today I'm speaking with Mike Akins, the CEO of ETF Akins, who serves as the index provider for the fund. Mike, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Jay. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, so let's start, because this is a newer ETF, with the general investment thesis for MVPS.
You bet. So the whole idea behind the Thematic All-Stars composite, which MVPS follows, was that the growth and transparency of the ETF thematic space has grown significantly over the last 5 years, right? We've gone from, 10 years ago, 20 thematic ETFs, a couple $1 billion, to today we've got over 161 qualifying ETFs for this strategy, and $130 billion allocated to those strategies. So the idea was to come up with a strategy that harnessed that growth and transparency of the marketplace, and then use it to establish a consensus view on which companies best align with these growing popular themes, right? So you think about, when I say consensus view, if you think about the 160 ETFs that qualify for MVPS, there's over 3,000 securities that are held, unique companies held across those. But when you really start going through, over 2,200 of them are only held in one of the 161 ETFs. Those are really kind of just noise filler. What we're looking for is those names that are the highest conviction holdings within these thematic space, as well as the names that show up the most often, prevalence. And that's what we mean by consensus view when we think about the all-stars. And then finally, the marketplace for themes is changing every day. There's new launches. Investors are changing where they put their money, where the flows are going. And so MVPS is evergreen in the sense that we rebalance monthly, and we take into account all those changes that are happening in the marketplace, picking up new launches of ETFs, as well as identifying where the money is flowing. And that all affects the ultimate holdings that are inside of MVPS.
When you look back at the third quarter, the quarter in which you launched this fund, what in terms of portfolio positioning stood out to you?
Yeah, so just broadly speaking, at the thematic landscape, it's been a brutal last month and a half for most thematic names. As you can imagine, these are high growth names. These strategies are holding companies that, make the NASDAQ look like it's a low growth strategy, if you will. So it's been a tough environment for themes. Broadly speaking, when we look at it, there's been net outflows, excuse me, but the net outflows has really been driven by the largest products out there in the marketplace. And across all of the qualifying themes, there was more ETFs that saw net inflows. So investors are still really keen to this idea of breaking down and going further than just kind of sectors and industries and looking towards themes. So that is one observation we made. I think another is we're starting to see some very attractive entry points across different segments of the thematic space. As of yesterday, there's over 44 ETFs that qualify for our strategy that were in net oversold positioning. So using like a 14-day RSI, for example, ETFs that were below 30 on RSI. And I think you're starting to see an attractive backdrop after, what was obviously in hindsight, a little too much optimism in the first quarter for some of these themes. You're starting to come back to reality. And I think we're seeing some attractive setups going into the last quarter of the year across themes like clean energy, disruptive technology, fintech, cybersecurity. All of these strategies are, anywhere from 10 to 25% off of their 52-week highs. But the base case for why you'd want to invest is still there. So I think that's really one of the big observations from a positioning standpoint, what that means for the portfolio. We're looking at we break down the market across 6 broad segments, and where we're seeing kind of the most attention from investors is within disruptive technology. Cybersecurity has been one of the top flow getters. And as a result, we're seeing names like Zscaler, Okta get upscaled within the portfolio. On the involving consumer front, probably the broadest of our segments, we're seeing things obviously like Amazon, but also like a CLTD and Activision on the video gaming side of the equation. Another segment that's really kind of budding from a standpoint of both flows and new launches is fintech. And specifically within fintech, we're seeing a lot of blockchain, crypto type strategies come to market. And that's leading to names like Square, Coinbase, PayPal getting upsized in our portfolio. Health innovation right now is dominated by the story around genomics. Genomics then is leading to things like CRISPR, Regeneron, definitely making their way into the portfolio. One area that's been an outlier as far as performance on the positive side has been stuff more aligned with the industrials. So Industrial Revolution is a segment that we track within the thematic space. And we're seeing things, jump in that area like Trimble being picked up in both the space as well as the broad-based Industrial Revolution strategies. Tesla, obviously from an EV standpoint, is a big holding there. NVIDIA shows up everywhere. NVIDIA is a great name to use to think about thematics. Semiconductors are a huge part of what's enabling a lot of these innovations to happen. And NVIDIA, an interesting fact, is actually the #1 held company across our entire landscape. So it's held in over 50 different thematic ETFs out of our current qualifying universe of 161 ETFs. And then finally,
Mike, how is that possible that one holding could be across so many different themes?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? But if you think about it, you just break it down. Semiconductors, the chip makers are enabling so much, everything from the EVs to video games to the technology and blockchain, sustainability. Essentially, all of the solar companies are classified as chip makers, right? So if you look at like an old traditional GICS standpoint, an Enphase is going to be classified from a GICS perspective as a semiconductor, but in reality, we think of it as clean energy. And I think that's a great point. But NVIDIA is just, I think the chip makers in general are such a key component to making and enabling all of these different advancements in technologies.
Awesome. So as you look at the MVPS holdings, looking forward to the fourth quarter, are there any names that stand out to you?
Yeah. So, I mentioned kind of in the lead in talking about how we look to the market and how the market's changing. We just went through our monthly rebalance last week, and a couple of names that jumped out at me that I think about from a positioning standpoint. Upstart is now a new holding in the portfolio. It IPO'd December of last year. And as a number of these thematic ETFs are picking it up in their annual rebalances, it's made its way into our portfolio. And it really touches a lot of segments, right? It's a cloud-based AI company. So it's made its way into a lot of the robotics strategies and AI in our Industrial Revolution segment. It's also making its way into a lot of the cloud and fintech holdings. So Upstart is a new addition. I would not be surprised to see that area of the market continue to grow and see new entrants from that perspective. Another one that I think doesn't get talked about a lot, but came into the portfolio is WTRG. It's a waste and water company. Essential Utilities is the name of the company. There was a new launch in the what we call under sustainability, the water segment. It's focused on water and waste services. That company got made in largely because there was a new launch, so it added to that prevalence factor, but also because we've seen significant flows into water ETFs over the past few months, upwards of $250 million. And that company kind of got in as a result of that. And then more broadly speaking, we continue to see more cybersecurity names. Cybersecurity over the last 30 days was the #1 inflow subgroup of the categories we look at. So like a Trend Micro in Japan made it into the portfolio. So positioning wise, I think we're seeing the portfolio really shape up. One, as we'd hope, very diversified, right? Multiple themes making their way. MVPS has significant exposure to your most popular themes across the marketplace. But also we're seeing a shift in some of the areas, right? So last year we had a little more cloud computing, a little bit more video gaming and esports. This year, we're more positioned in cybersecurity within disruptive technology. Sustainability, clean energy continues to be a very popular area, despite being by far and away the worst performing theme year to date. It's still attracting a lot of attention. So that could be if we get a rebound in that area, that'd be very positive for the portfolio. And then industrial revolution. I think what's great about the thematic space is people tend to think this is all correlated stuff. And it's really not. If you really go in and start looking at the different strategies. So we're seeing a lot of the strategies that have more allocations to some of those industrial, what you think of as cyclical sectors, but the cyclical companies that are on the cutting edge of advancements within their broader segments, I think is starting to play a role in the portfolio more and more as investors allocate more to, things like in broad-based industrial revolution or robotics and AI space. There's certain names that find themselves in all of these different strategies like a Trimble, and then therefore it becomes a bigger position within MVPS.
So Mike, as the CEO of ETF Action, I think you have a wide lens into the industry. And so as we wrap up this interview, what are your thoughts on the outlook for thematic ETFs in general as we wrap up the year?
Yeah, so when I think about the thematic space, number one, I think we're set up well. I'm a contrarian in the sense that I believe we're going to get another outsized surprise earnings across a lot of the technology names like we have seen the last 3 or 4 quarters. For whatever reason, analysts refuse to believe the rebound in the growth of these names. And as a result, if you look at trends year to date, earnings per share or sales trends, we're up 20-30% across MVPS names. But it's all happened in conjunction with earnings season. Between earnings seasons, the analysts really have done nothing. It's just trended sideways. So from a standpoint of the pullback that we've had, I think we're set up pretty interestingly for a nice quarter performance-wise. But more broadly to the space as a whole, I think we'll continue to see new launches in the space. I don't anticipate a slowdown. I do think we'll see some rotations. For all of the advisors out there thinking about, getting into the thematic space, or if they got into the thematic space earlier in the year, right at the top, there's a lot of opportunity to do some tax loss harvesting, maybe clean up and simplify your portfolio into a broader holding or swap out. So I think there's going to be some velocity of flows, if you will, as we roll into tax loss harvesting season. But I also think we'll see a continuation of some of the themes I've already talked about today. Really, industrial revolution, I expect to continue to lead. I think we're going to see more people try to launch in the health innovation space, right? Broader than just a generic biotech, but more into things like genomics, things like telemedicine. On the disruptive technology side, something I just don't see slowing down is cybersecurity. And when we say disruptive technology, I'm saying enablers for all sectors and industries, right? Those companies that are providing the technology for firms like ETF Action to be successful in our fintech endeavors, right? That are providing that capabilities. And cybersecurity just is going to be more and more important. And I think those public firms that are in that space are well positioned to grow as a result of that, because they're the experts and they provide that kind of cloud-based infrastructure necessary to safely operate in today's environment.
Mike, we appreciate your time. For viewers to learn more about the Amplify Thematic All-Stars ETF, please visit MVPSETF.com. That's MVPSETF.com. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you, Jay.